Okay, let me ask you this. Is there anybody here that still believes that there might be monsters under your bed?
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. Or that life is always fair? Or do you believe that if you just do everything perfectly, that nothing bad is ever going to happen to you? Well, you know, the other way we understand life as children is not how we understand life as adults, is it? I mean, as we grow and mature, we have to let go of certain beliefs or certain viewpoints because they no longer fit in our lives, do they? We have to mature into new beliefs, new understandings. You know, in the same way, spiritual understanding is meant to mature, to evolve as well. Spiritual maturity is not about maintaining or abandoning our faith, but it's about gaining a deeper understanding, maturing into a deeper awareness of what Spirit is evolving in us through new insights and grace. So this morning, I want to explore this journey together, this journey of spiritual maturity, how spiritual understanding grows, how we construct our worldviews, our beliefs, our identities. And then something happens and disrupts our life, and we have to deconstruct. Take away that which is no longer working in our life. And finally, reconstruct a new worldview, new beliefs, a new identity that is deeper, wiser, more compassionate, and rooted more in our own personal experiences. You know, there's a pattern or a cycle, this construct, deconstruct, and reconstruct. Now, Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan priest, many of you probably have heard of him, uses the term order, disorder, and reorder. But this cycle, this pattern, is used in psychology, philosophy, and spirituality as a blueprint for growth. Family, we build our worldviews, we build our ideas and beliefs, we build our identities on layers. Family habits, cultural norms, personal experience help form and shape the way we view God, the world, and ourselves. Deconstruction begins when something disrupts this worldview or these beliefs. The old way no longer makes sense. Have you ever been in that place? No longer making sense. And at first this can feel very chaotic, can it? Chaotic, causes confusion, disillusionment. Because you know, most of us do not choose this disruption, this deconstruction stage of our life. Life chooses it for us, doesn't it? Through a crisis, through a disappointment, through a death, divorce, and sometimes through a profound spiritual awakening that shakes the foundation of your worldview. It opens you up. So the question isn't, will we experience chaos? The question is, will we meet this chaos consciously? Because if we meet it consciously, deconstruction does not become the end of faith, but the doorway to a deeper, more spacious understanding of God, ourselves and the world in which we live and move and have our being. The turning point comes when we choose to engage chaos consciously. Instead of trying to return and hold on to the old way of thinking, the old certainty, we let go. We let go and we begin asking questions. Questions like, what is the truth here? What is underneath these assumptions that I hold to be true? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to hold on to? That's when deconstruction becomes a conscious process rather than just a painful experience. Chaos is an invitation. Conscious change is the response. Chaos cracks open the structure. Conscious change is our willingness to let grace, wisdom, and experience reshape us, reform us, raise us up to a higher level of understanding. Kind of reminds me of my relationship with my GPS. You know, you set out on a course. The GPS maps out the course. You're going down the road, and it says, turn left. I just keep on going straight. Now, the GPS doesn't say, now you really messed up and you ruined everything, does it? It just kind of goes, ding, recalculating, and makes a way forward. Now, this is the cycle, deconstruct, and reconstruct in 4 words. I have to remember what the first word is. The first word is turn. And then it's oops. Then it's recalculating. And then it's continue. That is this process in 4 words. Now, this pattern can be observed both collectively and individually. So I want to start first by looking at how this process has been revealed through the evolution of the unity movement. You know, one of the reasons I became a unitic was because of Charles Fillmore's famous quote. Can you guess what it was? I reserve the right to change my mind. Because Charles always felt that we had to be flexible in our spiritual understanding, for the truth was always revealing itself to us. He encouraged his students to have a growth mindset and not get caught up in rigid beliefs. Because life is an ongoing journey and the truth is revealed to us continuously. And we are invited to that. He was often heard to say, the truth that I know today may not be the truth I know tomorrow. So I reserve the right to change my mind. So in April of 1921, some 30 years after Unity had been founded, the Fillmores finally published a 32-point statement of faith that outlined their core spiritual views about the nature of God, about spiritual creation, and about Jesus Christ. Now, it was published to defend the movement against fierce outside criticism from fundamental Christianity, to clear up internal vagueness about what the group actually believed, and to set the foundation that unity was a Christian-based movement. They also presented this strategic, systematic presentation to clarify that unity's foundational premise was a metaphysical expansion, not a rejection of the teachings of Jesus Christ. So they published this statement of faith. But it was more not a set dogma, but just a summary. Because you know how they concluded it? We may change our mind tomorrow. That's the end of their statement of faith. We may change our mind tomorrow. So they held the statement of faith until October of 1984, when they ceased publication of the statement of faith. And the reason they did that is because the cultural landscape had shifted. The statement of faith used vocabulary that was formal, traditional Christian language, because it was made to address the critics of that day. But over time, there was a shift. And Unity went from a small publishing and prayer ministry into an international, global spiritual movement. And so what was found and discovered was that this statement of faith was so heavily based or written in Christian text that it was alienating non-Christian people. It was turning them away. But the spiritual landscape had changed. And Unity wanted to open itself up to a larger, broader audience. So it was decided to cease the publication of the statement of faith. And it also went against their foundational core teaching that truth is progressive, evolving, and free from human creeds. You know, I came here to Unity. I was involved in Unity in the 1990s. And one of the things we discovered here, when I came here, the church was called Unity Christ Church. In fact, when I talked to my GPS this morning and asked for directions, it came up Unity Christ Church. Well, in 2004, we began to realize that this name, Unity Christ Church, was keeping people from entering into our space. People who were interested in Unity teachings, but were not interested in Christian teachings. And so that was when it was made, we decided to do business as today, Unity of St. Petersburg. And we thought about First Avenue Unity, but then we thought, well, that's kind of too much like First Unity. It wouldn't work. So anyway, so the statement of faith was let go of. Then in around 1990, Connie Fillmore Bazzi, who was a granddaughter of the Fillmores, she came out with 5 clear, precise statements that have become known as the 5 basic principles of unity. Now, they came out not as doctrine, but to make unity teachings clear and teachable for this growing movement. It represented a reconstruction of how unity expresses its theology. It preserved the heart of the statement of faith, but in a clearer, more practical, and more contemporary form. So in Unity's early years, the Fillmores expressed Unity's belief through the statement of faith. It reflected the language and theological concerns of its time. But as the decades passed, people began to find that language too restrictive. And so it was asked, what are the essential ideas at the heart of unity? So came the 5 basic principles. And for those of you who might be saying, what are the 5 basic principles? The shorthand version. Now, this is also interesting because, as I said, I was involved in Unity in the 1990s. I was going to a Unity church in Texas, taking classes. These principles came out. I was taught them. The way I was taught them, and I'm giving you a shorthand version here, is God is, I am, I think, I pray, I meditate. And so I learned those. And I thought, well, this is a doctrine of unity. Well, I go to Unity Village, and I'm taking the class up there. And in that short time between them, they had already reconstructed the 5 basic principles. And they became, God is, I am, I think, I pray and meditate, and I act. Because it was necessary, they felt, to put in an action step there. So this is how this cycle of construct, reconstruct, deconstruct, and reconstruct has played out in unity. Now, on an individual level, for me, one of the deepest signs of spiritual maturity has been the movement from a transactional relationship with God towards a transformational life lived in grace. Looking back, my concept of God has evolved through experience, reflection, and openness to insight. Like many, I would imagine, of you, my understanding of God was a transactional understanding. If I was good, God would bless me. If I was bad, God would punish me. I earned God's love through my behavior. God's acceptance depended upon my performance. Over time and with study, contemplation, my understanding began to shift. No longer did I experience God primarily as a father figure, but I became to see this concept of God more as a principle, the creative ground of all being, the source of life, love, wisdom, and grace. Along with that shift came a new relationship with practice and meaning. Instead of asking, how do I get God to respond? I began asking, how do I become more aware of the grace that I already live within? Looking back, I see a pattern, constructing beliefs, then deconstructing some of them as experiences challenged me or disrupted my life and what I assumed to be the truth. Then reconstruction came, not a return to the old certainties, but a fresh integration that was more spacious, more authentic. I understand spiritual evolution now as an ongoing process. Every question, every experience offering another chance to deepen my spiritual understanding. So as I said, perhaps the deepest sign of spiritual meaning for me is this movement from a transactional relationship with God into a transformative life lived with grace. Now, it didn't happen in one cycle. I take time on a consistent basis to examine my concept of the divine. And it has grown from Father God. There was a time it was Father, Mother God. Have you ever seen God as Father, Mother? These are all valid viewpoints. Then it became the universe, creator, creation, everything, and no way to define it. So my life is shifting. I don't completely live in this space that I'm talking about today. But living in grace means less about earning or proving and more about noticing you already belong. Actions flow from trust rather than fear. Curiosity more than judgment. Worth is assumed rather than constantly measured. God's love just is. It is not earned, it just is. We don't change in order to be loved. We change because we realize we are loved. Big shift, isn't there? A big shift here. We construct, we deconstruct, we reconstruct. We change because we discover we already are loved. That God's grace is constant. It's not a reward. And spiritual maturity, understanding, is learning to trust this love rather than striving to deserve it, because it just is. So perhaps growing up spiritually isn't about having all the right answers. It's about becoming willing to let go of answers that no longer have life. To be willing to let go of that which is no longer working. And to remain open to new ways that Spirit is seeking to reveal itself. Construct, deconstruct, reconstruct. And then because life continues to unfold, we do it again. Construct, deconstruct, reconstruct. This isn't failure. This is a rhythm of spiritual evolution. So, maybe this week you can ask yourself this question. What belief, assumption, or fear am I being invited to release so that I can experience God's grace more fully? What belief, assumption, or fear am I being invited to release so I can experience God's grace more fully? Then take the time to sit quietly, turn within and listen. Not for the answer that is already here, but for the answer where wisdom is seeking to reveal it to you, to open you up to a new and higher understanding of the truth. If you can do that, you may discover that spiritual maturity is not measured by how certain you are, but how open you are to love. You may find yourself moving from fear to trust, from judgment to compassion, from transaction to transformation. And perhaps that is what it really means to grow up. Not simply growing older, but growing deeper into the awareness that we always live, move, and have our being in divine love. So may you have the courage to keep growing, the humility to keep learning, and the faith to trust that wherever this journey leads you, grace goes with you. And so it is. Well, I made it through that, didn't I? Okay. And with none of that. I have some fellow pickleball players here with me today. They know me in a completely different light. So this is a time in the service, right? This is the time in the service, right? Okay, where we give our support to this wonderful, loving community. Now, it's been a real pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've been here. It's been, I know, well over a year since I've been here. So many memories here. And it's nice to see that somebody that has a sense of decoration now leads this church. And you can tell her I said that. So one of the things to understand here is that this church solely exists because you're willing to support it. It receives no outside assistance, from what I know of, right? Unless things have changed since I've been here. It's through our free will love offerings that the lights are on, that you're not sitting here sweating, that you can bring me in to talk once in a while. So we talk about free will love offerings. And she might not like me saying this, but this is something I used to say a lot when I was here. Free will love offering. Now, if you're giving this out of obligation, put it back in your pocket. Because we know as we give, so shall we receive. Unity operates under that principle. Freely given, freely received. And we know that everything that is necessary for this church to be what it is to be will be provided for. So take your offering in your hand. I invite you to bless it, to give thanks. Just think how blessed you are to be able to give. And as you hold this offering in your hand, let us join together by saying this wonderful offering blessing that is on the board. And I'm glad that is what it used to be, because I can remember that one. So together, divine love moving through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is, and so let it be.